Well, hey there, pen fans. This is a very special episode of Goulet Q&A, number 300. I'm Brian Goulet, and we are here because fountain pens are still a thing. I was thinking about what to do for this episode and thought about going all out, maybe doing a big musical blowout or something like that. But then that doesn't make any sense at all whatsoever. So no, really, I thought, what's practical to do? What can I actually do, given that this is like literally the worst timing for me to do some big episode like this, because we just had a ton of terrible weather that canceled a ton of school. I don't even know if my kids have had a full week of school yet this year. It's been kind of crazy. We're in the middle of our development reviews and comp study and all that kind of stuff. And it's just a very busy time around the Goulet household. My daughter was sick this week. It was just like, we're just going to roll with the punches here. But I did have an idea for something interesting to do for you all. So, I was getting nostalgic, and that's what you do when you hit milestones, right? Truth be told, I'm not a big like anniversary guy or like birthday guy. It's just not a big thing for me personally. So I don't have the most experience doing this kind of thing. So I thought it would be fun just to kind of take a trip down memory lane a little bit, not do something too wild, but just go deeper, hear some interesting stories of old, some things that, maybe you haven't heard before or haven't heard in a while. So what I've done, I went back and I looked at the very first Goulet Q&A episode with such a young, bright-eyed, hopeful Brian, pre-COVID Brian. And I looked at that first episode, and I'm going to revisit a couple of those questions to see if they've held up. And then I went through my pen collection, and I pulled out a variety of different pens that all have stories. Ones that are interesting, not just because of what the pens are, but because of what was happening, why they're significant, what was going on at the time. I have a very tactile memory. So it's when I hold objects and see them, memories come flooding back to me. It's part of why I have the pen collection I have, is because that's just the way I remember things. It's weird. Not a lot of people are like that, but I am. So whatever. So I thought that would be kind of fun too. So I want to kick it off and say, I'm not going to do new stuff. I'm not going to have a lot of company updates or whatever. I'm trying to make this a little more standalone video. But I don't have a lot of feedback per se to share with you for this video, but I thought it would be kind of interesting for you all to leave feedback in the comments. Since this will be more of a milestone video, I would love to go back and read some of the comments that you leave. I always try to do that anyway, but I'll really make an effort to do it for this video. And it'd be interesting for y'all to read each other, see each other's. Because of the nature of what I'm doing for this video, it's going to be very nostalgic. So I thought it would be really cool to hear about some of your first pens that you've got, or if you have any memories of pens that you've got, any memories associated with it or anything, just what's significant about them. And then if you have any Q&A moments or just moments of Goulet videos, it'd be kind of cool to hear some of those, because it's kind of been a minute that we've been doing these things. So that's my call for feedback this week. And you can ask questions too, because obviously I plan on keep doing Q&A. I want to have a 301 and a 302 and all that. So keep asking regular questions that I can include. So yeah, let's start out with looking back at Goulet Q&A number 1. So the backstory of Q&A is in my earliest videos, I would put my email address at the end of every video and say, if you have any questions, email me and I'll be happy to answer. Young Brian thinking, of course, when I started out making videos, no one was watching them. No one cared. So my thought was, well, if I start getting a ton of emails and getting flooding, that would be a great problem to have, right? And I'll deal with it then. Well, that became a thing. But I kept up with it for a while. So as I was answering a ton of questions, I created something in a regular blog post called Mailbox Monday. And I think I did 50 or 60 of these things. I would just round up a whole bunch of email questions. And then I would put a blog post for the week. So I did that maybe, I guess, a year, a little more than a year. And then I was thinking, I'm making a ton of videos too. What if I took that same work that I was kind of doing in written form and just answered them in video form? And that was really kind of the birth of Q&A. So, my videographer at the time and I had this idea to do it. I think it was 3 days from start to finish that we came up with the idea and then produced one. And lo and behold, we've done 300 more episodes now just of this format of video. So it's kind of been wild to just come up with something like that has such staying power. But that first video was August 23rd, 2013. I don't even remember what was happening back then because my life before COVID is like a blur. But I looked it up, what was happening in 2013. Frozen, the movie, the original Frozen, was the top movie at the box office. Breaking Bad was finishing its final season. The top song that year was Blurred Lines by Robin Thicke featuring T.I. and Pharrell. And Walking Dead was the top show on TV along with Game of Thrones. That was when the Red Wedding episode came out and it was a whole thing. So that's what was happening back in 2013. The Ice Bucket Challenge was happening, if you remember all that. I did one of those back in the day. And that Q&A, it was 45 minutes long, which is briefer than most of the ones I've done. And I took 28 questions. 28 questions, that first Q&A. Oh, I just love to do a lot of work. So what I did is I combed through those questions, and maybe I'll insert some footage of the original video too, so you can see young Brian with a buzzed head because I didn't have time or money for an actual haircut, so I just buzzed it myself. Anyway, so I got a couple interesting questions. I wanted to see how I answered them then and see how I answer them now. So some interesting questions. From this moment forward, you can only use one pen for the rest of your life. What pen do you choose in the following price ranges? $50 or less, $125 or less, $250 or less, and the sky's the limit. Price is not an option. So at the time, I said the Lamy All-Star, which is a solid pen. That's a pretty solid choice. Monteverde Nighthawk, which you may not know what that is, but I want to show you because that's part of the stories that I have. Edison Nouveau Premier and the Pelikan M800. I have good reasons for all those, but all my choices now are different because with all pens that, not all of them, all but one of them has come out since that Q&A was made. So my choices now, and this could always change, but my choice now for an under $50 pen would be, this would be Eco. Big fan of the Eco. Choice for under 125, between 50 and 125, I put the TWSBI 580 ALR Caribbean Onyx. I just love that pen. The colors are amazing. No, wait, not the Caribbean with Onyx, just the, Prussian Blue. Caribbean with Onyx is also really solid, but Prussian Blue, that's what I meant to say. My pen for 250 or less would be the Lamy 2000, of course. There's a lot of good choice in that pen range, though. And the price is no limit one. I put the Pilot Custom Urushi. Now, I could put an Emperor or something like that, but in terms of pens I've actually used, with any significance, Custom Urushi. So there you go. My choices have changed a little bit. Here's a question. Would you consider having a selection of dip pens in the near future? And at the time I was like, yeah, but they're really for calligraphy. Not so much. Well, it's just interesting because we didn't really do dip pens for a while. We've always had the glass pens, like the Urbon and the Roaring Cleaner, but, Sailor has come out with some dip pens, the Diptons, the Hokuro, the dip pens, the Iroshizuku has come out with those, the Iro Utsushi. And so, yeah, we're leaning into that just a little bit. We'll see. It's interesting how tastes change and how people use different stuff, but haven't gotten into calligraphy, like calligraphy ink. I think that's more what I was talking about at the time. But, it's okay. I just thought that was really funny. That was in the first one, and I've talked about dip pens several weeks in a row in Q&A. Will you do a Goulet inside look video? You could show us around the office and the steps you take to send your products, etc. I actually did that for Q&A episode 100. That was in our old space, and I did it again for Q&A episode 200. So I made those into milestone videos and showed a little bit of how we do things. Now, it's been a minute since we did 200. That was when we moved into this space. We've rearranged some things and all that, but it's largely similar. We're still in that same office space. So I didn't feel the need to redo that for number 300. So yeah, you can check those out. What's your favorite pen or ink combo that is not Liberty's Elysium and the Pilot Custom 74? So that was my jam for a long time. Still solid. I still love those pens, and the pen and that ink. But now it's probably morphed more into the Lamy 2000 with Robert Oster Blue Water Ice. I talk about those, but still very solid. Still a blue, very similar color blue, and a similar range of pen. Another question, why do you only sell your current selection? Do you have plans of branching out into different brands like Visconti? And would you consider pen refurbishing or trade-in model? So we did branch out. We got Visconti that next year in 2014, actually, after that. So yeah, that was kind of interesting. And then trade-ins, pen refurbishing. Yeah, I was not hot on that at the time, and it still is not anything that's on my radar. It's great in concept, but the logistics behind that are kind of a nightmare on our end. So haven't done that, but you never know what's happening in the future. Let's see here, just a couple more questions, then I'll get into my nostalgia, right? So this question, you have Goulet nibs and joint venture pens, such as the Monteverde Nighthawk and the Edison Nouveau Premier. I think the Nighthawk had just come out, so that's why I was so much about this. And the Edison Nouveau Premier. Will there be a 100% Goulet pen in the future? And if yes, will you consider adding a flex nib to the nib family? So I thought this was interesting because we do have a Goulet flex nib now. Yovo came out with a steel flex nib. We offer that as well as several other brands that have that. And 100% Goulet pen, we still have not done that, 12 years later here. We wouldn't make it ourselves. I can say like the more I know about pen manufacturing, like really pen manufacturing fountain pens is I have no interest in doing that myself. It's a ton of work and you gotta have a ton of specialized knowledge and honestly quite a lot of equipment to be able to do that. It just doesn't make mathematical sense for us to do it. So what we've done is a ton of exclusives and co-branded stuff. That has made a lot more sense. So we have a heavy hand in, designing and kind of picking aspects of the pens, but we work with manufacturers who know how to manufacture pens. That is what makes way more sense for us. If we were to do a branded pen, then we would essentially be like white labeling it. We'd be sourcing it out from a manufacturer, put all our own branding and stuff on that, but, maybe do some assembly and tuning and stuff like that. But largely it would be another brand that's manufacturing it. It just hasn't made the most sense for us to do that. We probably could, but I don't know. It's something we're thinking about, but I thought it was funny because we literally got asked about that the first question, first Q&A. Because it's just one of the questions that comes up all the time. And then last one I have is Goulet Q&A is an awesome idea. I'm thinking about getting into wax seals, and I notice you seem to carry J.R.Bond's letters, but not their symbols. Why? Well, since then, we've discontinued all wax seal products. They got a lot more popular after that. We had some additional wax brands that we took on and expanded seals and stuff like that. And then it just seemed like they dropped off a cliff. Like interest in them totally died after like 2015, 2016. And no one wanted them anymore. And so we eventually just discontinued them all because no one was buying them. So we don't have any wax seal products anymore. But that was a thing for us in the beginning, Herbon, they started out making wax 345, 6, whatever years ago, 350 something now at this point. So yeah, but just interesting to see how things evolve over time. But I thought that was fun to kind of revisit those questions. And yeah, that's it for revisiting that. So you can go check out number 1 or check out any of the other 299 Q&As. But now I want to show you some pens, right? So I went through my collection. I want to show you some significant pens, and I kind of tweaked my setup a little bit here. I got some different lighting arrangements, and I have an enhanced overhead camera rig. So I'm no longer using my phone. Should focus a lot better. The picture should be a lot clearer. So I thought, what better video than to introduce it on a milestone video where I'm going to be showing you a ton of pens. So yeah, this should be fun and interesting. So, I'll be cutting back and forth a little bit for the rest of this video. Yeah, let's look at some pens, shall we? All right. Ooh, look at this. Got a cool new setup. And I can like zoom it and stuff like that. I can change the focus. All kinds of fun stuff. Woo! Pretty fun. Anyway, I'm going to stop goofing off like a little kid. Let's take a trip, shall we? So the journey all began back when I was making pens back in 2007, 8, 9. And I have some OG Goulet pens to show you all. So these are ones that I hand-turned myself. These were pens that were mostly made out of wood, but I did some other materials. Most of them are roller balls. I flirted with fountain pens, but really it was primarily roller balls that I was doing as like gift pens and engraving them and stuff like that. So I had some cool ones. This is a faceted one that I did out of a wood called desert ironwood. This one is a called kingwood in the rosewood family. I have some crazier looking ones. This was a material called true stone. Basically it was a It was kind of like stone, but it was like a stone and resin kind of material. It was like turning rock. It was really hard to do. And then I have some other, slightly fancier ones here that were more like the capped pens. Oh, that is a fountain pen right there. So my original dream when I was making making pens in general was like, I'm going to start making some fountain pens, I guess, and sell ink and paper to, get people to my site with like brand name products. And then they'll find my beautifully crafted handmade pens. There's one word engraved with Rachel's name. This wood is called tulip wood. It's in the rosewood family. This is where I learned that I'm allergic to urushiol. Most people are reactive with like poison ivy and stuff like that. This wood actually has that same oil in it. So the first time I went to turn this pen, I did not have a dust collection system. And I had the sawdust all over my arms. Well, I broke out in terrible rashes as if I just rubbed poison ivy all over my skin. So I learned not to do that. It's always fun working with natural materials. This is called red melee burl. I believe this comes out of Australia. I loved working with burl woods and really interesting materials because, pens are pretty small, so you can use some really exotic stuff, and it's reasonable and affordable because you're not using that much of it. And then these are a couple other pens that I have, and then we'll move on. These are the big ones, big honkers, and they're heavy. They don't post. So, I was trying to make some fancier stuff and all that, but the problem was I couldn't sell them for anything that was worth my time. And the kits to buy these are really expensive too. So the math didn't work out. I really had a passion for it. I got pretty decent at making them. This is a double dyed box elder burl. And this one right here is called Afzelia xyle. Crazy looking wood. But yeah, this is natural here. It's got these like webbing type things, and it's got some like, kind of ribbon texture. It's really cool. This one is a fountain pen too. So the honest truth is most of the pens that I made that I still have are like cracked or defective or something like that, because anything that I could sell, I would sell because I was so flat broke at the time. So yeah, most of the stuff that I have has some kind of flaw in it, but that's okay. That's what you do when you're in a startup. So once I was learning about fountain pens, I'd never used a fountain pen before. My first fountain pen, I wish I could remember exactly which pen it was, but it would have been a pen similar to, this one here, where it would have been like from a kit. So the nib wouldn't have been that great. It just would have been a stock nib that I would have gotten, with a kit. But it was a pen that I turned. So I can technically say the first fountain pen I ever used in my life came from a pen that I made, which is probably not like a lot of people can say that. But I was 25. I had never used a fountain pen. I filled the first bottle of ink that I filled from, I did okay. But the second bottle of ink in the same day, first day I ever used a fountain pen, was a 30 ml bottle of Diamine, and I spilled it as I was trying to fill it. Go figure. We all make our mistakes. But then I ordered some pens, commercial pens, because I was like, if I'm going to get into fountain pens, I need to know what are the pens that people are using, what are they talking about. And these are just a couple of pens that I have from the very first fountain pen goods that I ever used, like commercial goods. I have a Lamy Vista that was really popular, Vista Safari, something like that. So I talk about that one sometimes. The plastic is yellowed just a little bit over time because this was like mid 2009. We're talking at this point, so it's a while ago. I really loved the Pelican Script. It's a very simple pen. I hate the back of it, but it's a stub nib, and I'd never used any type of a stub nib before. I loved the way that it made my handwriting look, and the nib itself is actually just a little bit springy. So yeah, I had a bunch of these, and I used them all the time, and it was very affordable, so I did that. I was always kind of drawn to flex pens, but at the time, flex pens were not available. No one was making commercially available flex nib pens, modern pens. So you had to get vintage. You had the Falcon. At the time, it was the Namiki Falcon, but that was the only soft kind of flexy thing that you could get. So I got this. This is a Waterman Pink, which is actually very decent flex nib pens, kind of historically significant within Waterman. It was expensive, but not as expensive as these pens are today. I want to say I paid $200 or $150, something in that range for this pen. It would be a lot more now, I think, because it's a vintage pen and they aren't making any more of them. So that was my first foray into flex nib pens. And I was like, this is really cool, but I'm terrified I'm going to break it. At the time, you know, Rachel and I, it was just us. We had no employees. And I was trying to aspire to sell my own pens, but that sort of, you know, I had to pay bills. Joseph was born, and I basically was like, I can't have a workshop and make pens and basically make a living. So it was like, we're going to do the retail thing, the social media thing, and we're going to sell stuff that other people make, because that actually works as a business model for us. So that's what I did. This was in 2010. That's when I started making YouTube videos, and we started, you know, carrying more commercial products. I had to learn everything about the products. I had no experience with them. So I would go on to forums, go onto people's blogs and stuff like that, see what kind of products people were talking about, what information did they want to know, what did they have a hard time sourcing. And I went and sourced all that out, and one product at a time. Would test it out. If I liked it and saw the appeal, would buy it, sell a few of them, buy a few more, sell a few more, keep asking people. And essentially it was all just grassroots kind of stuff. But for the first year, I had stopped making pens and was only selling ink and paper. And I thought this might be all we ever do, because literally Rachel and I thought it would be our dream if we could just have the two of us working out of our house, little family business, had no aspirations to hire anybody or do any of that kind of stuff. So that was originally our aspiration. And we did that for a while, but we couldn't contain it. Couldn't contain it unless it got to the point where we were so busy. We were working 7 days a week, you know, like 16, 18-hour days. It took everything we had at us to get the business off the ground. And it was like, well, if we want to slow this thing down, either we need to start turning people away and just like having bad service, I guess, you know, or not carry products that people want. Like I literally was like, I don't know what to do to not grow this thing. So it's a very privileged position to be in. We had run a business for 3 years making pens that was very much not in that position. There's nothing I could do to make that business work. So coming off of that, it was kind of like, well, let's just go for it. You know, we were 25 at the time. It was like maybe 26 at that time, but pretty young, with a baby and a mortgage. So I was like, let's go. So part of that was expanding just from paper and ink. It was very personally hard for me because I put a lot into the craftsmanship and trying to make pens, and I was grieving, you know, when I had to kind of give up that dream. And so I didn't really want to carry any other pens for a little while. But as I experienced more pens, as I understood them more as a user, the desire to carry pens finally took hold, which is so obvious and makes sense now. But at the time, it was a very difficult decision. So this yellow pen, which honestly is not that attractive, this is an original Noodler's nib creeper pen. It is not a flex nib because the original ones were not flex nibs. It's not even that great. I mean, it was affordable pen. It was pretty interesting, pretty novel at the time. It's a piston filling pen. There was nothing approaching this price point. I think it was $12 when it came out. And so it was our Noodler's distributor who included this pen in a package of our ink. And I got that in there and I was like, what is this thing doing here? And he was like, I think you should consider carrying pens, you know? And it was just that little nudge from somebody who we'd worked with and built a relationship with. And you know, I'm not like proud that this is the pen that kind of did that, but it is historically significant in that way. So that's what this one is all about. So I thought that was kind of interesting and might be worth showing. Another notable pen, as I, you know, got some experience and got, you know, my hands on more pens, I started to understand, just like when you get into any hobby or you start getting into like wine or something like that, you can't distinguish any like good stuff from bad stuff really in the beginning. And that was that way for gold nib pens. Gold nib pens was kind of another barrier to get to, because like, think about it. We had nothing. We had no money. We had no budget for anything. It was scrap, put everything together. So when we first got into pens, it seemed ridiculous for us to get into gold nib pens because they were so expensive to us, So we really had to kind of work our way up, so to speak, to be able to get up to the level to sell gold nib pens. So the pen, I'm not going to elaborate on this one all too much. This is the Blue Pilot Custom 74 with a medium nib. This is the pen. This is the one. This was my first gold nib pen that I personally owned. I might have written with another pen or two, but this is really the first one that I like wrote with any regularity. And it really was the first one that sort of made me see like, oh, I get why people like gold nibs and why they might cost more. So that pen was significant. I've used it a lot over the years. Another pen that was significant that I mentioned in the original Q&A was a Pelikan M800. So as I mentioned, I was really in love with stub nibs, and Pelikan didn't regularly have stubs on all their nibs. So they came out with this M800. I was kind of pining over the Pelikan stuff. Pelikan was like the second brand we ever picked up. And so we did not sell any pens in this price range at the time. I don't remember when it was exactly. I want to say it was after we'd started carrying some pens. So this would have been like 2011, like mid to late 2011. Well, they announced they were doing the M800 with the 1.5 millimeter stub nib. And the reason this pen is significant to me is because the nib had a lot of baby's bottom on it. And the pen was coming out way in advance. It was a bit of a stretch for me to get it personally. And so I got it and I was disappointed. The pen did not flow like I thought it would. I really built up in my head what I thought it would be. And I was like, wow, this kind of sucks as an experience. Eventually I was able to kind of get it to work. I actually had a Nibmeister do some work on it so that it could write like I wanted it to. But it was a really good lesson for me, and I still keep that in mind of like what it's like to get a pen and be disappointed. So that's part of why we do so much on our site to put good information, to have writing samples, to have all that stuff, is because I don't want y'all to have to experience that, especially on a high-end pen. This pen, timeline-wise, this is a little further along. I don't remember, but I kind of dropped it in here. This was the first Mach-E pen that we ever sold. And this was a huge leap for us. This is a platinum pen. I don't even remember the model of it, to be honest with you. But it's this cool, like, dragon theme with a sword and everything. And it was, like, all stealthed out with black trim and stuff. We didn't sell, I want to say this pen was like $1,000 MSRP at the time, which was preposterous for us. But we thought it was really cool. We were like, let's try it. We put it up. I think we ended up selling, more than a couple. So that was kind of cool. That was like a nice learning and growing experience for us as like a really, really young company. It's like, wow, maybe we can. Because I'd never spent that much on really anything in my life at that point, except for like our house and our kid. But it was a good like learning experience. Really, a lot of it was just like building confidence, because like really it was so humbling stepping into the fountain pen world and like trying to make content and trying to sell these products, feeling like I did not have a lot of experience. So I always approached these videos with like, hey, I'm learning right along with you all. And I mean, I would spend 8 to 10 hours in the early days on every single video, between the prep, trying to learn the products, shooting, editing. It was a ton of time invested back then. And that's all time that has paid off, because I really believe the best way to learn is to teach. And I've benefited tremendously from making so many videos, because it's like, if I don't know what I'm talking about and I say the wrong thing, I'm going to look very foolish and not help a lot of people. So it forces me to sort of sharpen my edge a little bit to make these videos. So I still make mistakes because I'm human and there's just so many things to remember. No one can get it perfectly, but anyway, that's just part of my motivation. Some more pens here. These are the first Goulet exclusive pens that we ever had. This was a collaboration with Edison Pens, who we still have a good relationship with. They were very supportive of us in the earliest days. So it's kind of cool to do a collaboration with them. And it's kind of funny. These 3 pens, we came out with this is the Edison Nouveau Premier. What is Edison Nouveau? Well, the blog that we had at the time was called Ink Nouveau. At the time, I thought it would make sense to do a totally separate name for our blog and YouTube channel versus our website. That was a terrible idea. And it took me years to correct that. If you go back to our earliest videos, you'll see it says Ink Nouveau. That now just redirects to Goulet pens. But anyway, that was the idea behind that. It means new ink in French. So we came out with this pen in collaboration with Edison. And we were deciding we wanted to come out with 3 colors. Brian Gray came out with this matte, it kind of looks like ebonite, but it's not, it's resin, with this matte black color. I liked the blue, of course, and Rachel picked the cappuccino. The cappuccino is still available today. The other 2 dropped off. So it was sort of like a fun little contest that we had between the 3 of us of which pen would be the more popular one. Rachel obliterated us and has long since established herself as the best color picker. These pens, this is a special premiere that we did. This is like a limited edition one. And the reason I want to show you these 2 is because it's a good example of how difficult it can be to make exclusives and make stuff. So this darker pen right here, this is an ebonite material, and it looks a lot like Macassar ebony. And so I really liked this material. So he had a sample of this. He was like, hey, this is a new supplier for this ebonite. It's got this really dark one that looks cool. Gray was a woodworker too, and thought it was really interesting. Zoom in a little bit. And thought it was really interesting. So I was like, cool. So he made the sample for us, ordered all the rods. They came in, and this is what they looked like. He was like, I forget how many rods it was. He's like, I've got a whole shipment of material that looks like this. And he was like, it looks a little different than what we thought. So, and I think I don't even remember. Maybe we had posted the pictures of this one or something like that. So this was like early days of not quite understanding that things can change on you in the manufacturing process. And every supplier with every different part or material, you need to verify what you have before you go promising what it's going to be. It ended up working out okay because, in terms of the whole naming, Macassar ebony, it can be really light like this too. So it still kind of works color-wise. But this is the original color I wanted to do, and it just didn't exist. This is what it ended up being. I think he followed up with the manufacturer, and what it ended up being was when they're extruding the material, when they're making it, whenever there's a blend of colors like this, when they start making the rods, the colors haven't really kind of started flowing and blending yet. So whenever they have the start or the end of a run, the colors can be off and kind of wonky. It's all the stuff in the middle that ends up being more consistent. And I guess we just gotten a sample of a piece that was at the beginning or something, and it wasn't even what they could make as a reliable color. So anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting just to show making pens is hard. And sometimes you have to roll with the punches when you're doing exclusives and custom development. All right, so moving further along, this here is just a Lamy 2000. So Lamy 2000 was a very milestone pen for me. I still love using the Lamy 2000. Talk about it a ton, so I'm not going to talk about it all that much. But it was kind of a milestone pen for me too. All right, this right here, this is the Monteverde Nighthawk. This is what I talked about in that original Q&A. I guess it came out probably in 2013. So I can't remember. I think it might have been the first exclusive that we did with Monteverde, with Jaffa as a whole. So Jaffa is a distributor, they've been in business for 40 some years. They have Monteverde, Conklin, they distribute Diplomat and Delta and a whole bunch of other things. But anyway, this is our first kind of collaboration with them. It was really exciting because they do a lot of carbon fiber, but they'd never done a matte carbon fiber. And we did minimal branding, all blacked out trim and everything. So we were super excited for this. The shipment came in. Most of the pens looked great. Some of the pens with the carbon fiber material, there ended up being these bubbles that you could see because it's real carbon fiber weave under there. And when the resin material, like the coating, gets on there, sometimes air bubbles get trapped because it's like a 3D kind of texture underneath, and air gets trapped in between the fibers and stuff like that. Well, normally when they high polish them, you don't see any of those bubbles. But when you do a matte finish, you could see the bubbles. They didn't know that. We didn't know that. We got it in, we saw bubbles, and we were like, oh, this is not great. I think it ended up being like 20 or 30% of them had bubbles. We were being really picky, but it just had bubbles and we didn't want that. And we eventually ended up changing the pen and discontinuing it because it was too high of a rate of reject. So wasn't a workaround, but if you have any of those original Nighthawks, they're very exclusive. Some other pens. Let's see here. This is my Kaweco Lilliput Fire Blue. If you ever hear me talk about the pen that I sent through the washing machine and dryer, ooh, that's loud. This was the pen. And you can see here the difference between the grip, which is a little more vibrant in color, and the rest of it is much more muted. That's because I washed and dried it at 140 degrees or whatever. So yeah, that's what happens. This is the only pen that I've ever sent through the wash cycle. And it just happened to be this one. So I talk about that from time to time. I thought it'd be fun to show. This right here is an interesting one. Some of these, I got a lot of stories of like what it's like to develop exclusives and stuff like that, because I guess I haven't talked about that as much sometimes. And I thought it'd be kind of interesting with some of these. So this was this is a Conklin, this is a Durgraph. And, we did a metal one. We got to put our nibs on it, which is kind of cool. And we wanted to do like a raw metal. So we did a copper, we did a gold, and did a titanium. Well, the pens arrive and they look like this, kind of muddy and gross looking. Well, that's because copper patinas, maybe we didn't do a gold one. I think it was brass. That's what it was. Some of the brass ones were patinaed and all that kind of stuff. The titanium ones were fine. But yeah, metals patina. And I guess just because of the time from the manufacturer and then just, various people handling them and stuff like that, a lot of the pens ended up with this kind of color. It ended up being a whole thing. And we were like, wow, that really kind of stinks. Especially with a matte finish like this, because even trying to polish it is very difficult. So we were like, lesson learned. This is why a lot of companies that do metals like that will coat them with some sort of lacquer, because stuff patinas, or you make it so that you can polish it and stuff like that. This one's kind of interesting. Looks like a Conklin Endura, but if you try to uncap it, you can't, because it's wood. It's just a solid piece of wood that they put a clip on. So sometimes we'll get samples like this, when we're trying to brainstorm and stuff like that, especially if it's like a natural material like this, or there's a lot of variation in the material. We'll be like, hey, we'll have like a rendering or something like that. And it's like, hey, this seems like a thing that we want to make, but let's get a sample of it so we can see it in our hands. We can feel what the wood feels like, the weight and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of fun. It's like a fake pen, but sometimes we'll get things like this, like mock-ups. And this is what we go off of to say like, okay, we're going to order, whatever, how many hundred of them. So that's kind of fun. This one is the best mistake we ever made. This is a Delta Unica. This is a nitrocelluloid material. So the like real true celluloid. There's a little bit of a miscommunication. We didn't quite know. This was like an early Delta for us before Delta shut down originally. This Unica, it was a more affordable pen, but we liked this material. We wanted to use it. It's got a matte gold nib on it, which is kind of cool. We ended up, list price on this pen was $125, and we sold it at 20 off. So it was a $99 pen, which now looking back, we're like, that is preposterous. How do we offer a true celluloid pen for $100? The truth is we never should have. Basically, we all lost money on it. But if you have one of these original pens, hang on to it, because that celluloid is worth probably more than what you paid for it alone. I got a Omas Ogiva, the Ogiva Alba, beautiful pen, beautiful material. This was kind of a breakout like luxury brand for us with Omas. It was like a stepping stone for us to get Visconti's attention, honestly. Beautiful pens, RIP Omas. We were able to do this. I think this was an exclusive of ours. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it was. But anyway, I will be honest with you, going through my whole collection and thinking about stuff for you guys was actually a little hard for me because there's a lot of brands that we don't work with anymore, or that they had to pivot, or models that are discontinued, stuff like that. So it's like, some of it was kind of hard because I was like, oh, I really miss these. And like Omos being one of those. So it was it was a more emotional experience than I expected, going through everything in preparation for this video. So this one's got a story. This is a Conklin Duraflex. So this is when they put the flex nib on the Durograph for the first time. This is a black with a rose gold trim. If you look at the middle, I have tape on the center band. Why do I have tape there? Well, I'll show you, because if I untape it, the pen is going to fall apart. So this is a very sad situation. The body just snapped right off the back here. I have myself to blame. I had the pen. I had it inside a case. Actually, it was this case, this like 20 pen case, and I had it open, and I was carrying a bunch of stuff. I think I was going to a meeting, a product meeting or something like that. I was carrying a bunch of stuff. I had that case open on top of all the stuff I was carrying. I fumbled it. The case slid off. And, you know, just like when you're like making a sandwich and you drop it, it always falls face down. That's exactly what happened there. And it must have just fallen perfectly inside the case, smack, and the thing just snapped. So it's my fault. I have myself to blame. But I mean, literally, if you look at the body of this thing here, it is number 0000. This is like the artist proof version of it. Basically irreplaceable. I tried gluing it. It didn't hold. And I don't even know that I ever told the folks at Conklin that I did this, but yeah, a little heartbreak, but it's humbling. It shows you that we all do dumb stuff. Another pen. This is one that I've shown definitely in videos before. This is the Lamy Safari Dark Lilac. The reason that this is interesting, the pen itself is awesome, of course. But the reason that was interesting is because when this pen came out, it had the pen and the ink. It was so highly anticipated, it actually crashed our website. Now, granted, our website was not as stable as it is today, but this was a thing that was happening early on in those Goulet days. We would have, you know, a run of like flex nib pens, which were uncommon at the time, or, you know, a shimmering ink like the Urban, you know, 1670 ink or something like that. Anytime there was a really highly anticipated product, it would often like bog down our website or cause it to just like freeze altogether and stop working. Well, when we launched this pen, it was so anticipated. We not only like did the website freeze, but it actually jacked up the back end of our website too. Like orders started coming in out of order. People were trying to order so many at a time, of the ink especially, that the website, which should not have allowed multiple people to buy things that weren't there, because we only put in stock what we have. We don't do back orders and pre-orders and stuff. Well, it got so overloaded that like all these orders came in, and basically we oversold a whole bunch of stuff. And so it was a mess from a customer service standpoint, because not only had the website broken, and then everybody's freaking out because they're trying to get the stuff, but then we ended up overselling a bunch of stuff and had to give some very disappointing news to a whole bunch of people. So that was a very exciting, but also very humbling experience for us. This was back in 2016. And so we have since much upgraded our website and never have an issue. We've literally never had an issue with our website crashing under load. So I'm glad that that's not really a thing anymore, because boy, was that a thing in the early days. Got another Lamy pen for you. This is the Lamy All-Star Vibrant Pink. The reason that this pen is significant to me personally is I traveled to go see the Lamy factory in Heidelberg in 2018. And this is the pen that was on the production line when I was filming everything. So it hadn't been announced that this was the pen yet. So I did the video, we were cutting it together and all that kind of stuff. We had to wait to actually publish the video because the pen that was featured in there hadn't been announced yet. So that was kind of interesting. And it was really, really cool to see their manufacturing of the video Lamy How It's Made is our top video, I believe. The 7 Biggest Pen Mistakes was number 1 for a long time. Maybe that's still at the top, but if the Lamy How It's Made is not number 1, it's number 2. So anyway, it was a historically significant thing for me. I had never traveled outside of the US before. That was my first international trip. Extremely memorable, very stressful because I had a red-eye flight over there and did not get a lot of sleep, and then went to the factory and I was having to record everything. I'm not a videographer by trade. I've had to teach myself everything. So it was a little bit stressful traveling there and having to do all that recording and stuff and making sure that I got everything, but it all turned out okay. Some other, interesting historical pens. This is our Benu, Euphoria. This is the Iced Caramel Latte. This is the first one we came out in the drinks collection, the refreshments collection, which has since been a big hit. It was also significant for us because, Benu, a little bit before this, this is 3 years ago, the Ukraine invasion happened, and Benu was in Russia at that time. And so there was a lot of confusion and frustration, outrage. People were accusing Benu of all kinds of things unfairly. There was a lot of drama that happened, but the long and short of it is they were not in favor of it and left. They moved their whole operation to Armenia, where they still run it today. It was a very stressful time. I cannot even fathom the circumstances that they were in and trying to take care of their team and their family and having to uproot and leave their entire country and go and set up an operation. And so when they were getting their operations set back up in Armenia, we had a lot of conversations with them. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the good folks at Benu, Kate and Alex. We wanted to support them however we could. So we worked to come up with exclusives. They did a great job giving us opportunities. We wanted to give them opportunities. And literally it's like when all that stuff happened, all the stuff like when it first went down, that invasion first went down, they actually stopped receiving any payments because half of everything they received was getting seized by the government. And they were like, stop paying us because we don't want that money to go to the government. And so they didn't take any payment for anything for a while. So they're very solid people. They make great pens. So this was a really significant pen for us. And it's a great looking pen. But it kicked off the whole refreshments collection, but also was really significant because at the time there's some very real stuff going on with the folks at Benu. And that was a really cool pen to be able to support them with. This is a pen. This is probably not one that a lot of you have seen. I'm traveling back in time a little bit here, but this is the Delta Fusion 82. It's a really cool material. So I wanted to show that for one. But the nib is unlike something that I've ever seen anywhere else. So the whole point of this nib is that it is a stainless steel nib with a gold thing attached to the top. Then it's like fused together. The whole marketing behind this nib, it was not quite as expensive as a gold nib, but it was more expensive than a steel nib. The whole marketing behind it was that like supposedly the two materials together somehow worked some kind of scientific magic to make the ink flow better. It was hotly debated whether that was true or not. They had some scientific testing, I guess, to kind of back that up a little bit, but it was still hotly debated. We debated it internally. The fact of the matter is, though, the pen writes great. So whether that is what makes it work or not, it actually writes great. But either way, this nib is not available anymore. But this is kind of a fun little historical thing. Like, wow, that is kind of funky. And that was pre-Delta shutting down. And now seeing Delta kind of revive again is very heartwarming. So, we've done some exclusives with Delta. And if you recognize this material, look at that. It's the same material. So, we remembered the Fusion 82. We remembered this material. So when they were at the place where they were able to do exclusives again, we were like, do you have that material from the Fusion 82, the blue? And they were like, yes, we do. And so we made it out of the DV original. So it's just wild being in business for a while, having stuff happen. Companies go away. You get really sad. They might come back. You get really happy. It's just really cool. And there's more like humanness behind the stories, behind these companies too, which that, to be honest with you, like the more I've gotten in this business, that has been, getting to know you all, of course, as customers is really enriching as well, and our team, but getting to know like the passionate manufacturers and distributors, like this is not a super like high margin business. Everybody who's in the fountain pen business is pretty much in it because they love it or they're just crazy, or both. We probably fall into both categories. But it's just, there's really good people throughout this industry, and getting to support people, and you kind of get to know their lives a little bit. It's just really cool. Much like you all get to know what we have going on. Some other interesting pens. This is Diplomat. So this is Diplomat Magnum. This is the original Magnum. It used to have a satin trim. Now it's a shiny trim. That was a change that Diplomat made. We didn't get a choice on that one, but so this color is called Prismatic Purple. And this was a bit of a gamble because the only Diplomat pen that we knew anything about at the time was the Aero, which is a much more expensive pen. This is a very affordable pen, steel nib, and we really liked this color. And they were like, okay, we can do an exclusive on that color, but you have to buy, such and such a quantity. And it was a high number, very high number that we were not quite ready for, but we loved the color so much and said, okay, if we can do it, and have that and having exclusive rights for a year, then we'll do it. And we did. And basically the deal after that was, if you can buy that quantity every year, you can maintain the exclusive. And we've maintained that every single year. So I'm really glad that that color has been popular, because we took a gamble on it and it's worked out. This pen is interesting. This is a Peniter Avatar. So when this pen first came out, the Avatar UR, the Ultra resin, I think it's called, is a very, very durable resin. And Dante Del Vecchio, who is an absolute character, he's a gem in the industry, he was like, what can we do to show this? And I was like, well, what if we smash it with a hammer? He was like, let's do it. He was so pumped to smash the pen with a hammer on camera. So if you look at his interview, I don't remember where it is, hope I can link to it. We smashed it with a hammer, and then I ran over it with my car. So I still have all the scratches and stuff. Not really from the hammer. This is mostly from the car, because I ran over in our parking lot, which is asphalt. So it kind of scratched it all to heck, but it didn't break. So that's kind of fun. I like hanging on to stuff like that because, it's not every day you run over a pen with your car and it survives. A couple other interesting pens here. This is Visconti. So Visconti was like an aspirational brand for us. This pen right here is called, material is called Crimson Tide. We did this in 2 finishes. We had a rose gold, and then we had a titanium, or like a black ruthenium trim. So we did this. We had 18 pens, which was preposterous for us at the time, because I think we'd been carrying Visconti like 2 months, and the opportunity came up to do an exclusive of this material. They only had a limited amount of the material. That's why they could do so few pens. We'd never sold an Opera Master before. And so we bought them all and we sold them all. So I kept one, and it just looks really cool. So I'm glad we got to do that one. First exclusive Visconti. And then this is the Luna. This was a really cool material that they had done on like this expensive limited edition, like $4,000 pen. But we were like, can we do that material on an Opera Master as our exclusive? We did a lot of them. This is the artist proof, so I actually don't have a number engraved on it because it was like the sample. So kind of exclusive, I guess. But we did 188 of them. That was a lot. That took us a while to sell, but we loved the material. We knew we'd never get to use it again. So we went heavy on it. Sometimes you gotta just believe in it and then hope it all pans out. And then I got some other pens to show you here. Now we're getting a little bit more into like the pens that are just cool and interesting. So I got a few more exclusives to show that are somewhat significant. We got some Sailors here. So we did some Sailor exclusives. These were all Pro Gears, and we had Pro Gear Slims too. So we did 4 exclusives with them here. So we had, some sparkly and like the blue and the purple one. These were the Northern Lights collections, and then we did some stealth ones as well, which were really cool. I'm really glad we got to do these. It's getting a little harder to do Sailor exclusives because the pricing and the minimum quantities they want now are harder to meet. So that's why we didn't do one last year. I don't know if we'll have one this year, but still, it's cool that we got to do those ones. And then this is recent, so I won't talk about it too much, but for years in the future, if you happen to be watching this, for our 15th anniversary, we got to do the first U.S. Pilot retailer exclusive. This was our 15th anniversary Goulet pen. So very cool triple ombre effect. Looks great. We were very happy to have done this. It was expensive, but we were able to do it. I don't even know if we'll ever get to do anything like that again with Pilot, but if they're up for it, I'd love to. But historically significant for us for sure. It's one of our top brands. And then the other pens that I have are just some interesting ones, some significant ones. So I thought I'd just run through a few of these as we close out here. This pen, this is a Sailor 1911 King of Pens. So this one is not one that was available in the US. Look at that nib. Oh, I've talked about this before, so forgive me if you've seen this and you're sick of it. But this I got in Japan. So I traveled to Japan. I was actually there for Platinum's anniversary. But I, had never been to Japan before. And I was on my own using my phone and Google Translate. They had an event at one of the bookstores there. And I went in, I saw this pen, and I transacted the whole thing through my phone. And they were very courteous, very nice people there. And so I bought this pen, and it was really cool. At the time, we did not even carry Sailor, actually. It was before we'd rekindled a relationship with them. So I literally just bought it because it was beautiful, and I loved it, and you could only get it there. And so I'm glad I got that one. And I still enjoy it. Plus, it helps me remember that trip. Like, literally, as I'm holding that pen, I can remember, like, I can visually see myself it was in the basement of this bookstore. I can't remember the name of the bookstore. Maybe it'll come back to me. I want to say Maruman, but that's not it because that's one of the brands we carry. I don't remember. Maybe one of y'all in the comments will know. It's a very popular major bookstore that's in Japan. Anyway, I can see myself. I remember even where I was in the display, and I can see the guy who was helping me. It's crazy the way my memory works. I can't remember the name of the place, but I can visually navigate my way through the basement of that thing, even though that was 2019. That was 6 years ago. It's crazy. This is a very cool pen. This is a Platinum 3776 Kumpu. This was a limited edition pen, super popular. The color was incredible. I still reference this pen whenever we're having ideas for exclusives with other brands and stuff. I'm like, this is the teal. This is the teal to do on pens. It's the most beautiful, perfect teal that you can get. I hope it comes up right on camera. It's such a difficult color to capture digitally, but it's an amazing pen. They sold out very quickly and are very hard to get these days, but I kept one because I have a pen problem. Another interesting pen. This is the Pilot M90. This is a vintage pen from the 90s, early 2000s. I don't remember exactly when it was from. But anyway, I acquired this back in 2016, I believe it was. Very cool pen. Has an integrated nib, which is very special. It's a stainless steel pen with a stainless steel integrated nib. I wish Pilot would bring it back. If they did, it would be very expensive, but I think it would be worth it. So I don't know. I've advocated for this 10 years for them to pay to carry this again. Hasn't happened yet. But if they ever bring it back, I will take credit for it. I'm just kidding. A lot of people ask for it. This was cool. This also I got from the same trip to Japan that I went. This is an exclusive that they had over there. I think they had 200 of them or something. I bought this at this very small kind of hole in the wall pen store that they had a lot of secondhand stuff. And this was one of the pens, and I saw it and it was this blue is awesome. This webbing, I haven't seen anything like that. So I just bought it. That's all. This is an interesting one. So Benu in their early days, especially, they had some kind of wild designs. They had a tattoo themed pen, they had this parrot pen. It's very interesting. I think I've shown this before in various things. You decapitate the parrot to write with the pen, and then, his eyes are just staring at you. They're like little crystals or whatever. It's a fun pen. It's very weird. And it's just, I like to look at it every now and then because I'm like, ugh, what is going on with that? This one's kind of neat. This is the Travelers. You can still buy this. It's a regular thing. I love this pen. I don't like small pens. I don't like thin pens, but I love this pen. I've carried this around in my pocket so much. I never polish it. I like it to be as grody and lived on as possible. But yeah, if I ever refer to my carport pen, that's this pen, because I would like keep it clipped in my shorts in my pocket all the time. And I dismantled my parents' carport in like 95-degree heat with that pen in my pocket, and it held up great. This is a very interesting pen. This is called the Lamy Lady. This is from the mid-90s, if that wasn't maybe obvious that from the time frame. The nib is very cool. The nib like wraps way around the feed, and the feed is very interesting too. They don't really make anything like this anymore. It's a ceramic pen, so it's got a bit of weight to it. It feels pretty cool to the touch. And of course the pattern is wild. I call it the golden cow. Affectionately, of course. I'm not making fun of it, but I do like this pen. It's cool. It writes really well, actually. But this is kind of like one of those pens that I'm like, this is cool. Lamy doesn't make anything quite like this anymore. A lot of pens from the 90s get pretty interesting. And then I just got a couple more for y'all. I got a couple of TWSBI pens here. So TWSBI's very first pen was a TWSBI 530. I don't have one of those. But I do have a few 540s, and this looks kind of different because they did a couple different colors. They had an orange one, a smoke one, this blue one. I have all versions actually. They don't have like the ring back here, so they changed the design on it a bit. But it's kind of interesting, So if you have a 540, then you have like one of those early pens. They switched the 540 to the 580, so it was like an iterative thing. But I just thought it's kind of neat to show you like what an all-colored, 540 looks like. And then this pen right here, this is the TWSBI micarta. So this is made of micarta material. It's like a pressed fiber, pressed like paper, like linen kind of thing. Very interesting pen. It will patina a bit over time. I don't use this pen all that often, so I haven't like really patinaed it. But I think they only made like 100 of these things, or no, maybe they made more than that. Maybe we got 100 of them. I don't remember. Maybe it was $100. Somewhere the number 100 was involved. It says 803 on the top of my cap. So it makes me think that there were more than 100 of these pens. There were not a lot of them. Maybe there were 100 in the US. I'm going to stop talking because I don't know what I'm talking about. Either way, there were not very many of them. They're very hard to get, and they haven't done anything like this since. I believe this is in like 2014, 15, something like that. It was a while ago, but I kept one. And then last but not least, just, I was thinking about like, what pens am I carrying now? Of course, I have the Lamy 2000. I use that one a lot. I do use my Travelers on a pretty regular basis. But I have my Pilot Custom Urushi. I'm seriously debating about, basically like trading in. I've never traded a pen. Every pen I've ever acquired, I've kept. But this is a very expensive one. I want the blue one. That's the problem. I'm having a hard time justifying getting a blue one in addition to the red one. We'll see. I got to talk to my boss, get final approval on that. But either way, I love the Pilot Custom Urushi. If you haven't seen it, let me show you the nib on this thing. It's a monster. And it just looks gorgeous. So yeah, it's like a number 8 size nib basically. Very springy, very soft. I love it. And I have big hands. And this is a pen that like, it doesn't look weird in my hands necessarily because I have large hands. It looks weird when you compare it to the Traveler's pen because it's a tiny little thing. The nib is like, kind of crazy. Yeah, so I think that's what I got for you. I have a lot more pens. I could tell a lot more stories, but we're just over an hour here. And I feel like that's a pretty good place to stop. It's, if I can get a little mushy, a little nostalgic for a second here. A lot has happened since 2013 when I first started doing the Q&A thing. And we've, started many other series of videos and all that since then. But the Q&A thing, for me, it's like one of the things that was really birthed from like the early Goulet pens years. And it was really, for me, having done 300 of these things, like I did the original Goulet Q&A series for 7.5 years, took a break, that evolved into the Pencast, which then I sort of devolved back into the Q&A. And you know, so it's like I've had this series, like this kind of format of weekly video like this for like 11 and a half years now. It's just a lot of time in your life to spend sitting in front of a camera, talking about anything, let alone pens, and to have people like you show up and watch it. It still kind of boggles my mind a little bit. I try to really honor the time and the investment that you all put in watching this. You know, it is, I will say, over the 11 and a half years of doing this, it is difficult to fit this into my schedule and to make this happen, because it's not just the recording time. There's a lot of other stuff that it takes to prep everything. And I, believe it or not, I do actually put some planning into this. So it's not an insignificant amount of time that it takes to do it. And you know, it doesn't get easier necessarily to make that time either. But it's really important to me that I keep making these. Partly it's for you all, of course, but partly it's for me. Like, it keeps me connected to these pens. It keeps me connected to you all. And I don't know, just kind of keeps me connected to my earlier Goulet pens self. Because we've been in business for, in our current form, more than 15 years now. You know, I made pens before that. So since 2007, so like 18 years almost of just being in pens. That is a very significant portion of my life. You know, I haven't quite reached the point where I've done more of my life in pens than not in pens. That'll come at age, I think 49 or 48, I think. We'll get there. But it's just, it really makes me take stock and think like, wow, this has really been such a huge part of my life. And for a lot of you, such a huge part of your lives. It's absolutely wild to me. I never in my wildest dream would have thought that Goulet Pens would be where it is, that I would be getting to do this, serving you all, working with my team. I'm truly grateful. And I don't take any of that for granted. It is hard. Business is hard. There are a lot of headwinds that a lot of people are facing right now, that certainly we are facing right now, in retail and e-commerce, just in business in general. And sometimes it does get really difficult to remember why we do all this. Why is it worth all the stress? Why is it worth the risk? Why is it worth all the things? But what I have always appreciated about doing this type of like a weekly show is that it keeps like a regular drumbeat going. And I think it's worked really well for a lot of you, because no matter what craziness is going on in your life, it's something regular and dependable that you can kind of come back to. Hopefully I don't, you don't hate my voice and, get offended by anything that I do. Hopefully I'm pleasant enough, tolerable enough. But just to be there for you, like, pens are meant to be this like enjoyable, kind of safe thing in our lives. I feel like that's really, really important for us to have a place that we can, go and enjoy all that stuff. That gets threatened, that gets, attacked and stuff like that from time to time. But the way I see it is, we're going to keep doing what we do. I've been doing this for quite some time now. I still love doing it. Y'all appreciate it. I'm feeling the love, especially recently. Just the quality of comments y'all have had and the engagement has been very encouraging. So I'm grateful. I think that's what I'm trying to say. And I hope to be able to continue doing it for the foreseeable future. So things will change. Things will evolve, of course, but I'm grateful today for you all. I'm grateful to be sitting here for I don't know how many thousands of hours that I've sat in front of a camera now and talked to you all. But I'm just truly grateful for that. So that's my nostalgia for episode 300. Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Looking forward to number 301. So I hope you've enjoyed this trip down memory lane here. Hope you enjoyed a lot of stuff I had to share. I have one little fun fact for you to pull. Now, I don't know 100% because sometimes like we've published a video or maybe taken it down. I don't know exactly what stats are the most accurate, but at least from what I was able to pull from YouTube for this video, this will be the 1981st video that we'll have published on YouTube. since over 15 years ago. And that's pretty wild. That doesn't count all the lives and all the other things. I mean, we've done well over 2,500 videos, I know, in total. But in terms of like the long form ones that are still living up on YouTube, almost 2,000 videos, which is just crazy. I'm like, this is really a lot. Anyway, hopefully y'all have enjoyed that. And if you haven't seen a lot of them, they're all still out there. So go check out our channel. Look at them. Shameless plug. Go check out gouletpens.com because we have a lot of fountain pen stuff, ink, paper, pens, all kinds of good stuff. Yeah, I just appreciate you all. So please leave me some comments. Talk about your first pens. Talk about memorable things that you have in your pen life. That'd be really great and encouraging to hear. Thank you so much for 300 of these, and here's to 300 more. That's a lot. I don't know if I'll do 300 more, but here's to a lot more. Thanks for watching, and right on.